What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome back to another video. It's your host Ray. Today I'll be reviewing the Gemini Jets 1-400 scale United Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 8. This model was released in December of 2021 and it just got here today, so that's pretty nice. Here's how this review is going to go. First, I'm going to talk about the box and its features. Then I'll discuss the model and its features. And at the end of the video, I'll give you guys my personal opinion about what I think of the model and whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. So let's start. So here's the box. Its length is 15 centimeters, height is 15.2 centimeters, and the width is 4.5 centimeters. So it's a moderately sized box. It's your standard Gemini Jets narrow body box. So here's the front of the box. Here's the bottom, right side, top, left side. Here's the back. Take a moment to read this if you'd like. It's basically a ton of legal information, social media, and false guarantees. And under the flap here, you can see that the location of where the model sits and a ton of information about the model, the specific aircraft being replicated, as well as some history about the Boeing 737. So take a moment to read this if you'd like to. Alright, so here's the model. Before I begin the official review, let's talk some specs. So the model is 10 centimeters long from the tip of the nose to the APU. The wingspan is 9 centimeters, and from the ground to the tip of the tail, it's 3.2 centimeters. So it's a decently sized model, accurate to 1-400 scale, and at first glance, everything looks good. So I'll show you guys around the model really quick. Give you guys a quick 360. And apologies if my fingers get in the way of anything. It's just hard to handle these models with my fat fingers. Alright, so let's begin the review. First, I'd like to talk about the nose, and this is actually where the majority of my complaints of this model are going to be. There's not very many, but there is something I'd like to point out here. For those of you who are more familiar with the Boeing 737 features, you guys can definitely see something fishy with the nose shape. As you guys can tell, the nose shape is kind of incorrect. That's a common issue that's been appearing on Gemini Jets 737s. The nose shape isn't really molded the best, and this is usually limited to very few models, so it's a slight defect. Honestly, it's not too extreme, so I won't complain too much about it, but it's something you guys should be aware of, that if you order this model, you may receive a slightly messed up nose or a severely messed up nose, as I've seen in other cases. But there's that. But on most other models, the nose is a good shape. So there's that. Let's move along the fuselage. You can see a lot of printed detail. United titles look okay. They might be a little bit light, but judging by the light here, they look fine. The color looks fine. Moving to the rear of the fuselage. Here's the tail, and by the way, this isn't exactly the actual color of the tail. And there goes the exposure. My camera has trouble picking up United tails for some reason, but color looks accurate. However, you can kind of see some printing. Okay, that's more like the proper color. Color's accurate, but you can see some printing issues here and here, so just beware. The model might have paint defects. Other side still has paint issues, but they're barely noticeable, so it's done much better on the right side. And here's the right side of the fuselage. I'll just show this really quick because there really isn't much to discuss. And there's the right side of the nose, if you want to look at that. So here are the wings. The wings look really nice. There's a lot of molded detail. You can see the flaps and the air brakes. A lot of printed detail up here as well. Very nicely done overall. Now, something that I'm very picky about on these 1-400 scale, or just on model airplanes in general, the winglets. And of course, Gemini Jets usually screws up one part or another of their models, and this model was no exception to that. On the released model photo, the winglets looked pretty bad, and on a few examples of the model, the winglets looked also pretty bad. But on this model, they look actually decent. One thing I do want to complain, though, is the silver painting here. It shouldn't extend that far. Just a little bit less, actually, on the real aircraft, but it's nothing too extreme. My winglets didn't arrive bent or deformed like I've seen on other examples, so it's fine by me. Here's the bottom of the wing. A bit more molded detail down here as well, but something you can see here is a paint chip, so It's just one singular paint chip. I'm not sure what that was caused by. Most likely factory defect, but yeah, just something I noticed just now. Horizontal stabilizers look okay from a detail perspective. However, from a mounting perspective, they look pretty awful. You guys can see the wing flex on these. They're bent upwards too far. Wing flex has been a problem for Gemini jets and a few other model companies recently, so just beware this model may have more than desirable wing flex. Let's discuss the engines really quick. The engines look pretty good. They're molded nicely. However, on a lot of recent 737 MAX models from Gemini jets, the engines have a tendency to be pitched upwards, and this model is no exception to that. You guys can see how the engine is facing rather upwards compared to the left engine. The left engine looks just fine. That's not the only issue of the engines. On which one was it? I think it was. Yeah. Also on the right one, there's like an indentation here. You guys can barely see it, but there's an indentation of some sort. I think you can even see a paint scratch on there. For some reason, that's on there, and it's on the bottom of the engine, so I really don't care, but that was also a nasty surprise that came with this model. Aside from that, the fan blades look nice, and the detail looks really smooth overall. Let's discuss external features really quick. So there's just only two antennas on this model, these two on the top here, so you don't have to worry about poking yourself very often. This one here looks fine. Wi-Fi dome looks okay. It looks slightly detached, if you will. There's like a noticeable gap here, but I won't complain. It still looks smooth. And then there's this small antenna back here. Looks to have been bent backwards, but I guess it's better than being broken. I'm going to discuss the bottom of the aircraft briefly. Bottom of the aircraft looks pretty nicely detailed, a lot of printed detail, cargo bay doors look good. But the main thing I want to focus on down here, and before I forget, back here you can see the little tail skid. That was a nice little feature. But the main feature I want to discuss is the landing gear. This has also been another issue on the recent Gemini Jet 737 Maxes, and this is no exception to it. So these landing gear, you can see they're kind of like spaced out a little bit. They're at an angle, but when you set them on the ground, they roll and they like adjust themselves. So that's not I won't complain about it, but that's something you guys might be fishy about or picky about. So just make sure you take that into account. The gear might be bent. And the nose gear, that's a different disaster in itself. This one wasn't spinning, and you can see how extremely wide they are, and it still doesn't want to spin. So nose gear is less than adequate, I'll say that. It was pretty dissatisfactory. So here's the front of the aircraft, and you can see the nose wheel is just looks messed up. But let's discuss wing flex. Wing flex is not a problem for the main wings on this model. They look perfectly fine. They look really good. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, the horizontal stabilizers back here, they're pretty decently bent upwards. You can actually see the tail here. It's kind of leaning to the left side of the screen, which is to the right of the aircraft, so it's a little weird. And that concludes the review. So my overall opinion on this model, it's okay. If you want to buy it, go for it, but there's a decent, we're actually a more than likely probability that your model is going to arrive with issues, like the issues I mentioned with the messed up engines, the nose, painting issues, bent winglets, landing gear, all of that good stuff, plus a few other ones I might be forgetting. Just be careful. It's a gamble when you buy this, especially with current Gemini Jets quality. So overall, if you want to buy it, I recommend it. It's a solid model when everything goes together nicely. But just there is the risks of getting it messed up when you do buy it. So that's basically it. That concludes the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to say, feel free to drop that down below in the comments, especially feedback. I would greatly appreciate feedback. Just make it constructive. And yeah, I'll try and incorporate that in my future videos. Like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more airplane and siren content, and I'll see you guys later.